WATD presents John Paul, the Car Doctor. All things automotive. Have questions? Call 781-837-4900. Now, here's John Paul, the Car Doctor.
And good Sunday morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Car Doctor program on 95.9 WATD, the South Shores radio station. My name's John Paul, the Car Doctor, here to help you with your car problems. And let's see how we do this week. We kind of had a little problem last week with our guests, and this week we have scheduled Kyle Brower from iseecars.com joining us, and we haven't heard from him yet. And then a little bit later, we have Sean McLaughlin, the CEO of Emporia, who was supposed to call in last week, who something happened and it didn't work out. So he's going to be calling in a little bit later, and let's see who does actually call in. So hopefully all things are going to go the way they're supposed to, and be able to have people call in. So that's the plan, at least. That's what we're working on. So we'll try to get everybody to call in and do what they're supposed to do, and hopefully you have all your Christmas shopping done, so you can be ready to get all that stuff done and wrapped, or whatever people do these days. You can give us a call, and maybe you're thinking about that last minute call or that last minute present for that, I don't know, car person in the family. We at the New England Motor Press. We did a little gift guide, I guess, if you want to call it, things you can buy to try to, for car people. And we came up with quite a few things you could do. And I think one of the best things is some of these coffee table books that are, if you're somebody who likes to read, they have great. They have some great things to read, but also if you're somebody like me who doesn't like to read, and you're somebody who would rather just look at pictures, they have some great pictures in them too. And one of them, we've had the Barn Find guy on quite a few times over the years, and his books are great. I love looking at his books. The last book we gave away, the Corvette book, the history of the Corvette, that had some really great stuff in it. So I like seeing that kind of stuff and seeing what's out there. So it's always kind of fun stuff to look at. Jesse, I just sent at least a Facebook message to Kyle Brower, so maybe he'll respond. So hopefully he does. He's usually really good about getting back to us on certain things. Some of the interesting emails I got today, or this week, I guess, about car repair and car issues. One of them was somebody wrote in and said, I read an article, and it says, not my article, about replacing headlights in your car with LED headlights for greater light output. And he seems to think, he remembers me writing that LED replacement bulbs are not legal, and they want to know if that changed. And LED replacement bulbs are still not legal for on-road use, and the reason is that the way most headlight assemblies are designed, when you put an LED bulb in, which is certainly it's a brighter bulb, there's no question about it, it typically isn't a very focused light. So if you just kind of look at it from 20 or 30 feet away, it looks really bright, really white, but it's not well focused, and it might not give you good lighting down the road, and it's going to blind oncoming drivers. So that's why you don't see the major manufacturers like Sylvania and GE and others who make headlight bulbs make these LED replacement bulbs. So if you look back, if you kind of Google Car Doctor and Sylvania, you can find an old radio program where we talked to, I think the guy was Brian Noble from Sylvania Orstrom, which is interestingly located in New Hampshire. So the big giant lighting company is located right here in New England, and he talks about why certain bulbs are legal, and they would love to be able to design a LED replacement bulb for most cars, but right now they just can't do it. And the other thing that sometimes happens is that with LED replacement bulbs, they require less amperage than conventional halogen bulbs, and you put them in, and depending on the car, it may signal that your that you have a bulb out, because the system in the car thinks, wait a minute, there's not drawing enough current, so it puts a warning up about a headlight being out, when in fact the headlights are all working fine, but they're LEDs. And some of these LED conversion kits now come with a kind of a jumper that sits in there that allows to trick the system into thinking that all the lights are working the way they should. But LED replacements, they may look pretty, and you can buy all kinds of weird LED replacement bulbs now with 6 bulbs in them and all kinds. Yeah, it's not a great idea. If you replace them as a total assembly, so you're replacing the reflector and the bulb. If you have an older car, or maybe something like maybe a newer car like a Jeep that has where you can replace the entire headlight assembly, maybe it comes out okay. But I wouldn't want to take a chance. I think you're just going to end up with problems. My suggestion always is replace halogens with halogens, replace LEDs with LEDs. Replace conventional bulbs with halogens. That you can get better lighting that way. But stay with what you have. Somebody else wrote into me and said they want to know about different kinds of parts, and they watch a lot of YouTube stuff, and they notice one of the YouTube people uses a lot of Napa parts, and they want to know about Napa and how are they, and what can you get. And one of my other readers either runs or owns a Napa store, and he said what's nice about the Napa catalog is if you come in and you want, say, an oxygen sensor or something, they list in their catalog whether that particular oxygen sensor is the original equipment sensor or it's a true aftermarket, never used in that particular vehicle. So at least you're getting a quality sensor. And even Rock Auto will do that if you're buying parts online. If you look, and it'll say OE sensor. So you're getting a sensor that was made by a manufacturer that's the same sensor that's made for that particular vehicle. So if you have a Toyota Camry and needs an oxygen sensor, you're going to get an oxygen sensor that was made by the same company that made it for that vehicle rather than some other ones. He also, the first person who wrote in also said he was watching somebody else's YouTube video, and again, it happened to be oxygen sensors, and they said they ordered an oxygen sensor and the wires were actually reversed, which I'm sure could cause all kinds of problems when you have the 5-volt signal going to ground and the ground going the other way, and poof, that would cause some problems. So, try to stay with good parts. And they were saying they also bought some parts online, some wheel bearings online. They lasted about 2 years, so now they'll only use Moog, M-O-O-G parts. So they've had good luck with them. And I'm a little bit of a traditionalist and maybe a little old-fashioned. For suspension parts like that, I like Moog. I think they're a great company. They re-engineer some parts. I remember even to the point watching, I met somebody from the company once, and they were talking about how they will take a ball joint or something apart and see where the failure is, and then they'll engineer it to be a better part when it's done. When it comes to brakes, I'm a little old-fashioned. I like Bendix and Raybestos and names that have been around for a long time. So just one of those kind of things. Somebody else wrote to me, and they have a big SUV, and they have apparently a big family, and they're looking for something not quite as big as a Suburban or a Ford Expedition XL, and they're looking at maybe a Armada or a GMC Yukon or maybe the new Sequoia. I haven't driven the new Sequoia yet. The new Sequoia is actually a hybrid, so it's a V6 hybrid, and from what I understand, it's pretty good. I did take one for a quick little jaunt one day. I thought it was great. Rode a little hard though. I was a little surprised about that. I am driving right now not a Yukon but a Chevy Tahoe, and a 2023 Tahoe, and big V8 engine in it. That's got the optional 6.2 liter V8. Thing can probably tow. I'm guessing it probably tows 8,500 pounds when properly equipped. Performance from the engine is really good. It's surprising how quick it is when you step on the gas pedal, considering it's a big, heavy vehicle. It will seat up to 8 people, which is kind of nice. And even in the third row seating, it is still pretty comfortable for adults, which I found pretty impressive. So just a good vehicle all the way around. So that might be one to look at with the two rows of seats full, completely flat. so you have this kind of cavernous space if you're just trying to carry a lot of stuff in it. So it's something to look at. If I had to, based on my limited experience with the Sequoia, the Armada, and the Yukon or Tahoe, I think I would put the GM product at the top. I like the interior. I like the way it's set up. I like the idea it has a good assortment of knobs and buttons. It's not all touchscreen based. So, turning up the radio, turning down the radio, changing radio stations. It uses actual knobs. It uses a touchscreen if you want, and it has a great touchscreen. It also has a really good backup camera. It looks like it's 1080p high definition backup camera. It's really, really good. Now compared to the backup camera in my Hyundai Santa Fe Sport, which is very poor, low definition. It's okay, but it's not great. This one's like watching TV. It is really, really good. So if you have a little trouble backing up, it's great. It has all the safety features in it that you'd want to see. One of the things about it is, though, for best performance, it does require premium gasoline. So it's not required, but it's recommended that for premium performance you use higher octane gasoline, which is pretty expensive still. And it used to be, I remember when I worked at a gas station when I was a kid, it was a nickel difference between regular, mid-grade, and premium. Now, there's a big difference between the two. So the person who had the question about parts, he watches somebody called Eric O. I don't know who that is on YouTube, but there's a million people on YouTube, so it doesn't surprise me. So something to, when you think about buying parts, and this was kind of an interesting one, kind of a new car question. Person's thinking about buying a Lincoln Corsair, which I haven't driven the 23 Lincoln Corsair. I've driven the 22 Lincoln Corsair. Nice car, no question about it. But they want to know if the engine on and off function can be permanently defeated. They don't like the idea of when they come to a stop, the engine shuts off. They read that you can defeat it once per trip. So, like, you start up the car, you shut it off, it's fine. You park, you get back in it, you have to shut it back off again, or else it reverts back to the start-stop feature. Start-stop feature is probably one of the most highly defeated systems in cars, that and probably lane departure warning, that if you start to drift out of the lane, it beeps or vibrates the steering wheel or something. I would say that's the other thing that people shut off a lot, which was supposed to take the place of, like, think of lane departure as kind of electronic speed bumps, so it lets you know if you're going out of the lane. But what most people do is they usually shut them off because it goes by road markings, and if the road markings aren't very good, it thinks you're going out of the lane, for instance. So, or if the road's been repaired and it's got a groove in the middle of it, it'll think that groove is the lane marking, and you start to drift across it, and you're in the lane, but it thinks you're out of the lane. So those get defeated a lot. Well, could you permanently defeat a start-stop feature? Kind of. I don't know about the Corsair, but I know in pickup trucks, Ford pickup trucks, a lot of times what people will do is they'll trick the truck into thinking it's towing a trailer. So they'll plug in a trailer light tester. So sort of you plug it into where the trailer harness connects, and it has a little bulb for the direction, a little bulb for the brake light, and so if the lights are working. And what that does is it tricks the computer into thinking that you're towing a trailer, and when you're towing a trailer, you don't really want an engine that shuts off. You want it to be running all the time. So some people will do that, and I'm sure there's hackers out there that could figure out a way to tap into the vehicle's computer and shut it off. But we did some testing at AAA probably, I would say, 6 or 7 years ago now, where we looked at whether these systems actually do save fuel. And it was always my impression that these systems were put in place similar to, if you're old enough to remember, standard shift vehicles and gas economy and shift lights. Some standard shift vehicles would have these shift up lights that would tell you this is when to shift. And most people just ignored it. And what would happen is the federal government would give the vehicle manufacturers, I think, like a half a mile per gallon credit if they put the shift up light in the car. And so they automatically got this kind of bump in fuel economy, whether it really existed or not. And I was under the impression that was the same thing with these start-stop systems. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But we did some testing at work, and our California AAA has a full EPA-certified chassis dynamometer, so we can do absolutely EPA testing, miles per gallon, that type of thing. And we found that running the city cycle testing with a few different vehicles and figuring the gas costs about what it does now, we saw about $180 in annual fuel savings based on driving about 15,000 miles a year in a vehicle that gets about 20 miles per gallon. So they do save a little bit in gas. Do they save a lot? No. Are they annoying? Kind of. Some of the earlier vehicles that had this, especially BMW, was terrible. It felt like it felt like the engine was stuttering and sputtering to get moving. Different than a hybrid. Hybrid vehicles are great for start-stop because it's the electric motor that gets you going, and once you get going, moving, the gasoline engine kicks in. You don't even notice it. It's completely transparent. You don't even see it happening. So
we have John from Norwood on the line.
Well, why don't we talk to John from Norwood? John, good morning.
Morning, John. How are you?
Good. How are you?
All right. I was wondering if you could explain how mechanics charge for their services. Do they mark up the parts as well as charging you hourly labor? And if so, what are the reasonable limits on how much they can mark them up? The reason I ask is my sister is having a problem with her AC on a 2016 Mazda CX-5.
Mm-hmm.
And she took it in, they couldn't find a leak, and then they proposed a $2,100 repair just to replace line in and line out of the condenser as well as the condenser. And they're saying that those parts are like $1,200 when I see a condenser on Rock Auto that at most would be like $150, and most of them would be half of that. And yet they're charging almost $700 for that one part, which is really just a radiator, isn't it?
Well, it's kind of a radiator, I guess. And what did you say this was? It was a 2016?
Mazda CX-5, yep.
And it's, typically what happens is whatever the parts store pays for a part, they'll usually mark it up about 40%. So, and 40% markup's a little different than 40% discount. So it's really you kind of take the part and multiply it times 1.666, and that's how you get a 40% markup.
Are you talking about retail?
Yeah. So when a mechanic or an auto shop goes to the local Napa store, there's list price and their cost. And their cost, usually there's a pretty good spread between the list price and their cost. And that's sort of how it's all determined where the price is going to be. But some shops, that they don't get as good a discount, so they say, we need to make 40% on our part to be able to make a profit in our building. So they start by saying, okay, whatever that part costs, we got to mark it up 40%. And depending on where the part comes from, that's where it can get a little bit crazy. Now, the other thing that happens is, depending on where, for instance, if the shop went to the Mazda dealer and bought this evaporator, it would be the list price on a Mazda evaporator is $588.52. Now
is evaporator different from condenser?
Oh, you said condenser. I'm sorry. I was thinking. Let me back up here a little bit. So condenser would be the condenser for this vehicle would be $648.07. So if I went to the Mazda dealer and said, I need a condenser for a 2016 Mazda CX-5, they would hand me a bill for $648. If I went there as, John Paul's, the Car Doctor Repair Shop, at a dealership, I would probably only get 10% off of the list price. Now, I can't really make a good profit or make money in my shop if I'm only getting 10% off the list price because there just isn't enough in there. So I might look at that and go, well, this thing's going to cost me $600. I got to get $1,000 for it to make my shop profitable to pay for all my bills. So that's kind of how that works. Now, a lot of shops just take whatever the list price is, they get their cost in the list, and they just stick it whatever the list is. So, and this is no different than, and it probably is now with Home Depot and Lowe's, but back in the old days, things like plumbing wholesale shops, big electrical supply houses. When you walked in and you were part of the trade, you got a different price than somebody who came in that was a homeowner that said, I need to buy a bathtub. It was just, there was trade price and there was retail price. And the same thing kind of exists here. Now, with all of these discount auto parts stores and online auto parts, things are a little bit different now. You're right. Can you buy a reasonably good condenser from a place like Rock Auto for, under $200? And yeah, you can. Absolutely. But the idea that they're kind of guessing at, it could be the condenser, it could be the high and low pressure lines, kind of worries me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't made any guarantees that that's
right.
the problem.
Right.
And said they found oil in the lines, but isn't that normal?
Yeah, there should be oil. Should be oil in the lines. There shouldn't be oil outside the lines, but there should be oil in the lines. That's what lubricates the compressor. So,
right.
Yeah.
But
now, if you looked at the line and it was you saw oil kind of seeping out through the connections, then you could go, oh well, the line's leaking. But if you're seeing, if they actually opened it up and said, oh, there's oil in the lines, yeah, you expect the oil has to travel with the refrigerant to lubricate the parts inside there. That's the way it's meant to work. So, and when it comes to labor rate can be almost anything. The average labor rate, I did kind of a very non-scientific survey back a few months ago, kind of called a bunch of shops and said, what's your labor rate? And independent shop labor rate, about the lowest I found was about $90 an hour. Most were averaging about $110 to $120, and dealerships were averaging $150 to $180. So, the days of $30 an hour for labor or $40 an hour for labor, those days are long gone. And then what happens is when you're replacing something like a condenser in this Mazda, they go to a flat rate guide. So how long should it take to replace this? And it should take 3.5 hours. So there's the time. And the idea is that if it takes the mechanic 4 hours, you still get charged for 3.5. And if it takes the mechanic 3 hours, you still get charged for 3.5. So at least there's some kind of normalcy to this. And I even know of some shops that mark up the flat rate time. They'll look at the flat rate time and go 3.5. Oh, we do 100 and we do 10% more or something like that. So we add a little bit to the labor time. But these labor times there's actually time studies that are done on most normal repairs. And it's like, and years ago, they never even used time-saving tools. They never used power tools or anything like that. Today, they use time-saving tools, and they kind of go through it, and they go, well, this is how long it should take a competent person to be able to do this job. And again, the idea behind that has more to do with paying the technician, because they get in something called a flat rate shop, they get paid how many hours the book says to do it. So in other words, if that mechanic can do that 3.5 hour job in 2 hours, they get paid 3.5 hours. If that mechanic takes 4.5 hours, they still only get paid 3.5 hours. So, a typical flat rate mechanic in a 40-hour work week might clock 50 or 55 hours if they're good at what they do.
I mean, all that makes sense to me. I mean, I'm
except when you pay the bill,
pricing. So if you say, the book says, and our hourly rate is this, then the customer knows that. But it sounds like what you really have to do is ask them what exact part they're putting in, because if they're putting in a $700 Mazda condenser, then I understand that I'm being charged $800 for that. Right. But if putting in a $55 cheapest on Rock Auto condenser and I'm being charged $700 on that, I want to know that. Right.
Absolutely. And sometimes I will say that I know for a fact, sometimes what happens is some shops will put the $70 Rock Auto condenser in, and when they look up the price, they look up the Mazda price and say, the price is $693.45, but that's not the one we put in. That's what we use for a pricing guide, and that's not fair to the consumer either. You should be paying for what you're getting, and if you're not getting what you're paying,
If my sister have any idea of what they put in, she's not going to crawl into the car and look for a label on it.
Right, and that's where you actually. You're absolutely right. That's where you need to say, are you putting in an original equipment part? Are you putting in a replacement part? And when I used to run our approved auto repair department at AAA, we would have pricing questions like that. And, and I would go back to the shop sometimes and say, can I see your receipt, what you paid for that part? Because sometimes I'd look up the part, both on the aftermarket. I'd go to like Napa Online or some online parts store and go, wait a minute, this part looks way out of whack. And then maybe they would pull out like a dealer invoice, and I go, oh, that explains why it's marked up so much, because you guys had to pay just about retail price for it, and that would be acceptable. On the other hand, if they pulled out, Joe's Auto Part receipt and it was, $100 and they charged $600 for it because that's what the original equipment price was. No, that's wrong. You need to talk with we need to talk about this. You need to give the customer some money back. If you want to make 100% profit and take a $100 part and charge $200, which I guess that would be 100%. That's one thing, but to charge 500%, that's ridiculous. It's up to the consumer to be informed. That's what it is.
Oh, I appreciate the education.
Okay, all right. Thanks, John. Take care and Merry Christmas. All right, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. We need to take a break and pay some bills. My name's John Paul. This is the Car Doctor program. You're listening on 95.9 WATD. We'll be right back.
No one wants to be left out in the cold. With AAA, you won't be. Their experienced technicians will be there fast to help with your dead battery, unexpected breakdown, frozen locks, or any car issue that comes with winter weather. They're trained to fix most problems on the spot, often without the need for a tow. And you're covered in any car you're driving or riding in, 24/7. Join AAA today at aaa.com/join.
Please join us for an exciting new show on WATD, TED Talks Hockey, with former Bruin and Harvard hockey coach Ted Donato, Wednesday evenings, 7 p.m. on 95.9 WATD.
Make an appointment Sunday morning at 11 for John Paul, the Car Doctor, on 95.9 WATD. Now, back to the Car Doctor.
And welcome back to the Car Doctor program on 95.9 WATD. Well, every time I turn around, it seems like I'm seeing an electric car, or I have, we actually just did a seminar at work about electric vehicles. We had Anna from the green energy people on with the seminar. We just bought 2 Hyundai Ioniqs for our driving school cars, so we actually have fully electric cars in our driving school fleet now. We're seeing electric vehicles kind of wherever we go. And when we were talking with Zane Merver, who drove his brand new electric Hummer out to Ohio, one of the things he ran into was sometimes, EV charging stations weren't working the way they were supposed to, and he ran into some problems. But there are smart charging stations that you can put into your home. And with us is Sean McLaughlin. He's the CEO of Emporia. Sean, good morning, and welcome to the Car Doctor program.
Good morning, John. Thank you so much for having me on and giving me the opportunity to talk about Emporia and our products.
Well, let's Emporia is not just an EV charging station manufacturer. You have a lot of smart home type systems, right?
That's right. We like to say that we are revolutionizing home energy. And the electric vehicle charging is just one aspect of that. But as people do buy electric vehicles and bring them home and plug them into their house, it is one of the largest energy consumptions in the home. So it's important for us to be able to pay attention to the electric vehicle and how we can manage charging in and around the home energy usage.
Now, years ago in a house that I used to live at, we had an electric water heater, and the electric water heater had its own meter, and was sort of on a timer, and it would run the water heater sort of on times of lesser electrical demand, which gave me a little bit of a break on my electricity for my home. Now, do the charging systems that you have, are they smart enough to be able to do that type of thing as well?
Yeah, correct. So we've actually connected to the Department of Energy's NREL utility database. So with that, you can select your utility and the rate schedule you're on, and we'll upload your utility rate schedule in the back end of our system. And then you can choose to only charge when electricity prices are cheap, and we'll automatically handle that for you. We'll identify off-peak, inexpensive hours, and that's when we'll activate your charging. During the peak, expensive hours, we pause charging. So you can choose to only charge during the low off-peak hours.
Now, years ago, the term, V to V or V to X, or nobody knew what that meant, and I still think maybe people don't. But your charges also allow, where applicable, some bidirectional use too, right?
Well, we're getting there, John. We're
getting there? Okay.
The technology is evolving, and it's coming to the market soon. So right now we have our smart home energy management system, and we have a level 2 EV charger. So we can charge a car at about 11.5 kilowatts an hour. So if you think about a 60 or 70 kilowatt charge, it'll take 5 or 6, maybe 7 hours to charge your car if you go from zero to full, which most people aren't. They're coming in and plugging their car in several times a week and maybe filling up a half a tank at a time. But we are working really hard on what we call our bidirectional EV charger. We've completed full testing of Proto 1, and it went fantastic. We are now in the middle of building our Proto 2 product, which will be our first attempt for a go-to-market product. And we're working with a couple of different car manufacturers and testing this with their new vehicles that are going to support bidirectional charging. But the whole idea is that you'll be able to come home, plug your car into our charger, and during those expensive hours that we talked about, we can pull from your car battery to run your home. And then when you go to sleep, the non-expensive energy prices in the middle of the night, we can fill your car back up. So your car will be full when you get up in the morning, but we'll have moved your energy consumption away from those peak hours, or at least the energy you're buying from the grid, into those inexpensive off-peak hours. And John, you remember, in most places across the country that are on time-of-use energy pricing, those peak hours are 3 or 4 times higher than the off-peak. So we'll, in essence, be able to lower people's energy usage bills, their electric bills in their home, by somewhere between 30 and 50% reduction by leveraging their car battery.
So instead of drilling an oil well in my backyard to produce energy, I can sell my energy that's in my electric car back to the utility.
That's coming. Yeah. So the 30 to 50% that I talked about is really just managing your usage around your utility rate schedule. Now, in California this past summer, they did a pilot around what we call a virtual power plant, and Tesla just announced that they're launching another virtual power plant, this time in Texas. And so, again, the idea is that we as aggregators can pull all the cars that we have access to in any given market zone, and then we can access the wholesale market on behalf of our customers and buy and sell, trade energy into the wholesale market for our customers. And that's going to be a whole other revenue stream for the customer. So on top of the savings on the utility bill, within the next 3 or 4 years, these programs will roll out across the country, where if you let an aggregator like Emporia manage the excess storage in your car battery, we can generate, somewhere between $500 and let's say $1,500 a year of additional revenue off the car battery for the homeowner.
Wow,
there's been some pilots done around this, and they're actually, I'm being conservative, at $500 to $1,500, because the pilots that have been run have shown. There's a Nissan Leaf hooked up to a rec center in Boulder recently, and it saved $270 a month for one Nissan Leaf for a full year. So on average, it's $270 for the year.
That's pretty impressive. And it would, certainly 1 year, 1 month of that, well, I guess a couple months of that, would cover the cost of like a typical in-home charger, right?
Yeah, the level 2 EV chargers, they're 48 amp that we have, we retail for $399. Now, the bidirectional charger, it has an AC to DC inverter in it.
Yep.
So it is taking AC from the grid, turn it DC, put it in the car, DC back in the car, turn it AC so you can use it.
Yep.
So it's got the power electronics. So it'll be a little bit more expensive.
Yep.
We're targeting between a $2,000 and $2,500 price for our bidirectional charger. So it's a little bit more of an investment, but should still pay out well within a year.
Yeah, and I would say,
resiliency, right?
Yeah, I would say real, compared to like solar panels on a house that could take, 8 to 15 years to pay off. Something like this is almost instantaneous if you think of it compared to that.
Yeah, it should pay off well within a year, and you get grid resiliency. So if the grid goes out, you'll have your car battery to run critical loads in your house. So you won't have to worry about refrigeration or critical lighting and those types of things.
Now, Tesla has the Powerwall. Do you have something similar to that? Do you have a home battery, storage battery?
We do. We have a home battery system very similar to the Powerwall, and you can install this kind of stationary battery that you can install in your home, and again, use it for critical load backup or for storing renewable energy, maybe solar energy, that you can then use in the night when the when the solar's not producing.
Now we'll get to that in just a minute, but I'm a cheap New Englander, so for me, I guess I would rather buy an electric vehicle that I know that could power my house in an emergency, rather than spend the money on an electric battery system that may or may not be needed when once every 2 years the power goes out for 4 days. So to me it almost makes more sense to do that. But you mentioned solar, and your chargers can, through this system, can kind of interface with solar voltaic, right?
It does. We have a home energy management system, and it goes inside of your electrical panel, and it monitors your energy usage real time, not only for the whole home or building, but for all the individual circuits that are within your panel. So we can show you exactly how much you're spending on your air conditioner, or maybe you have a pool or a hot tub in the backyard, exactly how much energy they're using and what you're spending. So we kind of break it down in a disaggregated view. Doing that, we can also see how much solar you're producing, and we can detect if you're producing more solar than your home is using. Typically happens in the middle of the day, and then we can turn the EV charger on during those times. So you're just charging your car from the excess solar that you're generating. So instead of sending it back to the grid, where often you get a steep discount from what it's going to cost to pull it back from the grid when you need it, we can store that in your car battery instead and charge them from solar only. So we can really optimize or maximize the value of your solar.
It sounds like, this is really, as I look at, where I work, we have a charge point charging station, which I guess is technically not the right term for it, but EVSE, and but it's a pretty basic thing. It's it's on a 40 amp circuit. They ran cables out under the ground, ran it to the thing, plugged it in. It's hooked up to the internet, so we know if it works or it doesn't, who's using it, how often it gets used. But at the end of the day, it's a fairly simple piece of equipment. Where this sounds like you've taken that and just made it a whole bunch smarter.
Yeah, exactly. When you look at the hardware, you're exactly right, too. A basic level 2 charger. Again, the bidirectional is a little more complicated, but the basic charger that you're using today, there's not a whole lot to the hardware. Honestly, you think about it, it's like a really big smart plug, right, that you might put into your outlet. And it's just taking AC current from the grid and passing it on to your car. There's some communication that has to go in your car, but it's not very difficult. And so the hardware is really the same from one charging company to the other. Now, ChargePoint has a huge market share, maybe 70%, some say, for home charging systems in the United States, when their hardware is the same as ours, same specs, same 3-year warranty, and they're asking $750 for the charger, and we retail that same charger for $399. And so it's just to us, we kind of scratch our head and like, why would you buy the more expensive one when it is actually the really same product? And then we've got a step further, but integrating it with our home energy management system, we can actually offer the features that they cannot, because they don't have that information on what's going on in your home to decide, hey, are you producing excess solar? We also have peak demand management. We can pause your EV charger when your oven kicks on or when your air conditioner kicks on, or if you're in a business setting and some kind of industrial load kicks on, so that we're managing the peak usage that your home or building ever gets to, which is another way that utilities like to charge. They charge you up the energy usage you use and the peak you use, because that's the size of grid they need to maintain to service you. And so we can manage that peak load as well. And the others can't. They've been spending, again, their time and effort, and lots of marketing and advertising, but also in building out these DC fast charging networks across the country. We've been really spending our time and effort on integrating with the home and the home energy usage.
Now,
that's really how we differentiate from the competition.
Now, one of the things here in New England, what sometimes happens is, people have older homes that have limited electrical capacity. I mean, most new houses today have 200 amp service, and some even have 400 amp now. But a lot of old New England colonial houses are running on 100 amp service. Can your smart charger, because it has the ability to shut off when the electric stove comes on, kind of be able to interface with that sort of system?
It can, and there's a couple of ways we help manage smaller panels. One is you can set the maximum charge rate in our charger to the limit, right? So we deliver a 48 amp charger, but you can set it at 32 or 24 amp to maximize its full load. And then you think about the in-home energy management system, and you're looking at, say, the air conditioner, and we can detect if your air conditioner is running and lower the amperage that's coming out of your EV charger to, again, manage that peak load.
Well, that sounds pretty impressive. Now, did your company start off as electric vehicle chargers, or did you start off more as like smart plugs?
No, I mean, the vision of the company came about kind of between 2015 and 17 as we really, really started studying the energy transition, and we kind of landed on two business theses that we thought we could add a lot of value to the market with. The first was home energy management. There's some great energy management products in the market for large commercial and industrial buildings. Think Siemens and Schneider, but they're thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars, and take a professional install and a lot of times a professional operator. No one had made a really simple, self-operating, inexpensive, right, because it's got to fit the utility bill for a home, not a whole building. And so we thought, boy, 85% of the buildings are that, less than 50,000 square feet, and there's not a system that makes sense. It doesn't fit the bill, literally. Right? The bills are smaller, so our products can be more cost-effective. And then the second thesis we had was really around bidirectional charging. The idea that if you have an energy management system, and then you can plug in an electric vehicle and tap an enormous battery that is unwritten in the purchase of the car, you could really start driving, again, this 30 to 50% cost savings off of utility bills. And so we started with the home energy management system and thought, when the time is right, when the electric vehicle adoption is high enough, when the electric vehicles support bidirectional charging, we needed the certification bodies, IEEE and ULs, to come out with all the standards for bidirectional charging, that we would build ours. And that started converging last year, so we kicked off our development process at the end of last year and have a big engineering team hard at work in bringing that to market.
Now it sounds, not to sound too corny, but it sounds like really the future is here, and it's here now with these types of systems, that it has sort of everything you would need to think about when it comes to home energy management, especially if you're, and I kind of envision the future right now is almost a hybrid garage where you have an electric car that does sort of 90% of everything you want to do, and then you maybe have a second car that's maybe a plug-in hybrid or a conventional gasoline car of some sort. But you might have both in the interim in the next few years. But when you combine it with this type of charging system, where you have a lot of different options, it really does. It really does sound smart. I guess it's the simplest way to think of it. It just sounds like this is sort of the way to go to be able to do that. And especially especially where 90% of the people that have electric cars charge at home, why not try to do it as efficiently as you can?
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned the future's kind of here. We've been saying that we're building for a future that's yet to come. We've been doing
okay, yeah,
5 or 6 years. But you're right. That future that is yet to come is upon us now, right? And the cars that are being delivered today, the majority of those will support bidirectional charging in the future. It's literally waiting on software updates that they can do over the air. So kind of the hardware is there. And now we're just waiting for both kind of policy, right, and regulation and certification, as well as the technology to kind of merge together. And so, if you're plugging that large battery into the grid, it has impacts to the grid, right?
Right.
And so you have to, there's standards that are being drafted as we speak and finalized as we speak that folks like us that are manufacturing these tools are going to adhere to. And so all that's converging. It's converging over the next literally 12 to 24 months. And within a year or two, you're going to really start hearing and seeing a lot more about bidirectional charging and the benefits that you can gain from your vehicle while it's parked in your garage 95% of the time, right? So this great depreciating asset can now actually be a revenue source and really kind of pay for itself over time. Like, again, the Nissan Leaf, the greatest thing, I talked to the manager of the city of Boulder that did that program that had the $247 savings a month. He said the best part is the lease on that Nissan Leaf was only $219. And he's like, and we drove it. It was a fleet vehicle. It wasn't like it was just parked.
Yeah.
So it completely covered the cost of the vehicle. Amazing.
Well, I mean,
That's right.
and it, currently, where I work, my full-time job, I work for AAA, the Auto Club, and our goal is by 2030 to have all of our light service vehicles, so our vehicles that go out and deliver gas and deliver, change flat tires and do jump starts and all of that, will all be electric. And somehow in my head, I'm seeing, wheels spinning of, let's see, if we have 250 electric vehicles that get parked for about 8 hours a day, and they run shifts of about 16 hours or something like that, and they plug back in and they make electricity while we're sleeping. We're making money while we sleep. It's going to be a bunch of happy CEOs.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Think about all the fleets out there that are taken home at night, right? And if you, as a CEO, invest in bidirectional charging for your employees in their home, in essence, they'll save money. The employee will be a benefit to them.
Yep.
And they'll charge your car for free, right? And so there'll be no more fuel cost on your fleet. That's a game changer for a lot of these guys that are running huge fleets, right?
Yeah.
And then if you're bringing them back into your office, you can still do the same thing, right? You'd have a fleet of bidirectional chargers that would be pumping energy back into the grid during those. Yeah, and that's great. Your employees come home, right? They come back from work, 5 o'clock, 4:30, park the fleet, and they go home, and what do? They cook, clean, do laundry, and that's when that peak energy usage is. And that car has just been plugged in so it can help run the grid during those time periods. Again, then 10, 11, 12, you guys on the East Coast?
Yeah. No, on the East Coast. So it is pretty amazing. And the other part of it is, before we let you go, I just hopped on your website and looking at the other things you do. You have panel monitors, energy monitors, and again, kind of smart plugs at the same time. So you including smart thermostats, right?
Yeah, we not only have our own product, right, with the home energy management system, EV charger, smart plugs, home battery, and bidirectional, but we have third-party smart home devices. So we've integrated with third-party smart thermostats. We're writing to Home Connect now for third-party appliances. So being able to adjust smart refrigerators, saying let's pre-cool your refrigerator during the cheap off-peak, so we don't have to run your refrigerator as hard during the peak. And adjusting your refrigerator by a couple of degrees isn't going to be a poor user experience. And we do that today with thermostats, right? We can adjust your thermostat. For example, when you have excess solar, we can pre-cool your house. So when the solar does go down, your air conditioner's not having to run as hard. And so integrating with third-party smart home devices, thermostats, appliances, lighting, smart load centers. We're working with a couple of the large load center manufacturers who are bringing their smart breakers to market to integrate with those so we can turn power on and off at the breaker level as well. But doing it all through kind of the Internet of Things, right? The IoT technology that so many homes are adopting. Now we're, believe it or not, still in the early stages of it. They're saying that market is only about a 2% penetration to where it could grow to over the coming decades when you think about how intelligent you can make your homes.
Yeah, no, it's pretty amazing stuff. And if people want to find out more information about Emporia, it's emporiaenergy.com. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. And we have our website, our store there, and we're also listed on Amazon as well.
Well, Sean, I want to thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your Sunday morning and joining us on the Car Doctor program. And I want to wish you and your family and your employees a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Oh, John, thank you so much for having us on, and you have a great holiday season as well.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. We need to take another break and pay some bills. My name's John Paul. This is the Car Doctor program. You're listening on 95.9 WATD. We'll be right back.
Wouldn't you just love new kitchen cabinets without the high cost, the mess, and the inconvenience? Hi, I'm Sheldon Stewart of Stewart Painting, and I know how scary the thought of a demoed kitchen for months can be. So I have a solution. Let our cabinet refinishing team restore the beauty to your kitchen cabinets. Our professionals will apply a sprayed finish that costs less and will be done in days. We paint hundreds of kitchen cabinets every year, and we would love to add yours to our list. Call Stewart Painting today at either our Hingham or Hyannis offices to schedule your free estimate. Or, to receive a virtual quote, go to stewartpaint.com. Choose Get a Virtual Quote Now, create a video of your project, send it to our sales team, and receive a price within 24 hours. So remember, Stewart Painting. Expect the best.
No one wants to be left out in the cold. With AAA, you won't be. Their experienced technicians will be there fast to help with your dead battery, unexpected breakdown, frozen locks, or any car issue that comes with winter weather. They're trained to fix most problems on the spot, often without the need for a tow. And you're covered in any car you're driving or riding in, 24/7. Join AAA today at aaa.com/join.
Don't miss the Just Steph Show every Monday night from 8 to 10 p.m. for fun guests and tips on living your best life every day. I'm bringing sexy back to Monday nights.
Tomorrow night from 8 to 10 on 95.9 WATD. Make an appointment Sunday morning at 11 for John Paul, the Car Doctor, on 95.9 WATD. Now, back to the Car Doctor.
And welcome back to the Car Doctor, and kind of the Cliff Notes version of cars that can go a couple 100,000 miles or more. Carl Brower, executive analyst for iseecars. Carl, good morning. And there are cars that easily go a couple 100,000 miles, right?
There's a lot of cars that can go over a couple 100,000 miles. You know, you've just got a lot of really well-built cars compared to even 20 or even 15 years ago. And what that means now is that if you're out there buying a car and you're thinking, well, this car's got too many miles, it's a low price, but I don't know if I can get much life out of it, we've got data that suggests if you pick the right car, you get some good records to prove it's been well cared for, you might be surprised how much is left.
Yeah, I mean, back in the 60s and 70s, it wasn't unusual to do a valve job at 30 or 40,000 miles and maybe do an engine overhaul at 70 or 80,000 miles. Today, with, like you pointed out, you know, you change the oil, you change the coolant, kind of follow the manufacturer's recommendation. A lot of cars, you know, 200,000, 300,000, even 400,000 miles is certainly possible, right?
It is, and, you know, that's what we're seeing. We've got cars that, like the Toyota Sequoias, Land Cruisers, those things are hitting toward 300,000, and it's not like they go to 300,000 and die. They're going to 300,000 and still going. These are just the current odometer readings on them as they're changing hands. And then we looked at cars that had the best, you know, mileage for the dollar, and you've got cars like Chevrolet Impalas and Toyota Avalons and Toyota Priuses that, you know, you're paying somewhere between $87 and like $112 per 1,000 miles left. And you're buying these cars for between like $10,000 and $14,000, and they've got 100+ thousand miles left on them.
Yeah, it sounds like it's one of those things that, people that maybe are a little bit older, that are a little bit afraid of high mileage cars. But now it's not unusual at a car lot to see, out on the front row, it says low miles and it's got 120,000 miles on it, where before, 20 years ago, that 120,000 mile car would be at the back of the lot somewhere, covered with dust, because they'd be a little bit timid, trying to sell it. So, it really is this combination of better oil filters, no lead in the gas, and all that sort of stuff that a lot of people hate, but it actually really has added to the longevity of the vehicles today.
Well, don't forget the engineering too, John, just the tolerances, right? How they can assemble an engine today compared to before. It's just a better built engine.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because it wasn't, the old timers would buy a new car and change the oil after 100 miles, because there was a certain amount of junk that came out of the pan, machining and all that sort of stuff. And today that's not the case. You're right. Today these cars are lasting a lot longer. We're just about out of time, but if people want to find out more information about this, iseecars.com, right?
Right, iseecars.com. We got 2 recent studies about how long these cars will last and how much you got to pay for them.
All right. Hey, Kyle, thanks for checking in with us, and have a happy holiday, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, have a Merry Christmas to you and your listeners. Take care.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. That was
Bye-bye.
Kyle Brower. That was Kyle Brower, executive analyst for IC Cars. Well, that music means we need to go. Hey, Jesse, Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, and to all of our listeners, Merry Christmas. We have next Sunday off, so we're not going to be here next Sunday, but we will be back on New Year's Day with all the latest car news and information. Until then, make sure you wear your seatbelt, drive safely, be good to your car, and if you see an emergency vehicle by the side of the road, slow down.